Good morning, everyone. I'm Margaret Hinkle. I chair the Post Commission. We are here for our 40th monthly meeting. I'm calling the meeting to order. Let me begin by welcoming Chief Lester Baker, the newest member of the commission, to the commission. We thank Governor Baker. Sorry, we thank Governor Healy. That is a terribly serious mistake made by Margaret Hinkle at this point. We thank the governor and her team for making that appointment. Now, as those of you attending our meeting know, our commission has 9 members and a statutory quorum of 7. We do not have 7 members in attendance today, and therefore we've been advised that we can assemble and we can fulfill our monthly meeting requirement. We cannot, however, take any formal action, and in an abundance of caution, we will not engage in any sort of deliberation during this meeting. Accordingly, we will accept reports that are set forth in our agenda, but we will not discuss those reports in any substantive way, and we will then adjourn. I do want to in advance thank the staff for all the hard work that they have put into the matters that are in the agenda and the material that you, the members of the public, have seen. And at this point, I turn to our executive director for his report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, Madam Chair and commissioners, and welcome, Commissioner Baker. It's good to have you. As is tradition, as part of these reports, I will share my screen and go through a PowerPoint presentation that I have prepared. So give me a minute. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Thank you. I will be touching on certification process. I will have a brief update on disciplinary records, and I will conclude my report with an administrative and hiring update. The certification effort continues. It's almost concluding. We are at the last stages of completing the recertification of officers with last names I through P, as is required and prescribed in the statute. As I have reported before, our approach this year is to corroborate or audit information before those certification letters go out. This is especially true for the information relative to MPTC, the Breach Academy and compliance with those requirements, and the process for sharing information between MPTC and Post is progressing as planned. We anticipate notices for certification to go out beginning of this next week. During the last month, the Division of Certification continued to corroborate the job status as well as compliance with certification requirements for all individuals that were in our roster. The division continues doing outreach to agencies without any submissions or partial submissions. There are only 2 small agencies that have to corroborate whether there is any officer I through P to submit. This represents only 3 officers according to our roster. Towards the bottom of the chart, you can see that the difference between the total number of officers whose information was submitted as of July 7, in other words, 5,609 officers, and those as of August 4th, in other words, 5,665, is only 56 officers. Meanwhile, the number of officers who we projected would be submitting for certification has gone down significantly from an initial possible projection of 557 to 51. This reflects the fact that many individuals in our roster included non-sworn individuals or individuals who might have exited the system, retired, for example, or resigned. It is critically important for Post to have reliable and up-to-date officer information and confirming this information is a key component of the certification process. So as we are doing this certification auditing requirements with information submitted to us, we're also ensuring that we have the most up-to-date officer information. This chart represents the breakdown of provisional certification results. This also represents the progress that is being made since our last report. I have the report from July 7th on our July meeting and data as of August 4th for today's meeting. As I have previously explained, we take the names of officers in rosters from the MPTC, and an important area of focus is corroborating the job status of all those people. Other figures worth highlighting in this slide are the relatively small number of individuals in a category other than certified or conditional certified. This is a very small figure, an aggregate of about less than 1.5% of the total roster. Put another way, those that are in compliance with certification requirements or only have a small missing technical requirement, in other words, those are conditionally certified, represents the vast majority of officers in this cohort, or in other words, 98.6%. A final point to make in this slide is that even though these are provisional certification results, just like the status states, the title states, Post has a very high degree of confidence that officers in these categories have been vetted, and we will be sending those notices in the coming days. I'll move on to a brief update on the disciplinary records project. Post has finalized the collection and review of disciplinary records. At this moment, we are finalizing what we believe are necessary redactions of core information. Our estimate of redactions is about 160 records out of between about 4,500 records. I'll explain that these redactions are limited to core information, and we do not intend to redact or withhold record if it contains core information. But this surgical approach, if you will, represents a lot of careful work that is currently being finalized by the legal department. Our intention is to publish information in two different formats. One report that will be viewable and searchable by the public, but then also a CSV format or table format that will be where members of the public will be able to filter or aggregate information to begin to do analytics. I will emphasize that the data comes from agencies. What Post has done, which has been a significant effort, has been to aggregate and validate this information so that it can be reported out in a close to uniform way. We also have to anticipate that there will have to be a process for correcting some of this data once we put it out there. We hope that it's not a lot of corrections. We've done a fair amount of analysis and validation, but still, this may require some process for correcting information. But our approach will be not to have those discussions with individual officers, but rather the agency, as it is those agencies that have submitted all that information. It's technically their information as well. I'll remind the commissioners that this is data as of January 31st of this year, and will continue. This project will continue because there will be data updates, periodic data updates after that process. I'll close by saying that this has been a significant effort on a few individuals throughout different divisions. Certainly, the legal department has done a lot of work, continues to do and finalize this work. The technology division has done a lot of thinking about and analysis of the data. They're also finalizing that. We've been supported by people from the TSS, the Executive Office of Technology, up until this point for a lot of our migration efforts. And of course, a couple of individuals, notably Brian Cooper, in terms of coordinating with agencies to submit this information and correct errors when necessary, has been a tremendous effort over the last few months. I am now comfortable saying that because publishing this information is imminent, this could happen as early as next week, but by no means any later than the beginning of next month when we publish all of our data. I'll move on to an administrative update. I'm also very happy to report that Governor Healy has signed the Commonwealth's fiscal year 24 budget that happened yesterday. This budget includes $8.5 million in appropriations for posts that we previously requested and planned for. And it also includes a language to allow posts to roll over unspent monies from fiscal year 23 into fiscal year 24. This is called a PAC, which stands for a prior appropriation continued. This is something that we asked and planned for, and this really enables posts to implement the priorities that we identified for this fiscal year. This represents, of course, important investments in human capital, as well as technology that we continue to make. The current projection from the finance team is approximately $1 million for that PAC money. In other words, what rolls over from fiscal year 23 to 24. And in the following weeks, the finance team will be closing the previous fiscal year and formulating the detailed spending plans that are due to Administration and Finance for fiscal year 24. We anticipate to come back to the Commission at the September Commission meeting with a full year-end result of fiscal year-end results, as well as a preview of those spending plans for fiscal year 24. I'll move on to our hiring updates and other administrative matters. Since last month, we welcomed 3 new members to our team. The Division of Standards has now a third enforcement counsel in Amy Parker. Richard Wanju and Jessica Rush are going to be joining the certification team with an eye towards supporting both the certification effort, but more notably the data management and reporting that our new tool, the LEA portal, demands. This is true for not just certification information, but there will be a lot of effort when we roll out the LEA portal for submitting complaints to post. We plan on onboarding a second intake coordinator at the end of August, and we also plan for potentially 3 more attorneys in one of them in the Standards Division, and 2 more potentially for the legal department. I'm gonna stop there, stop sharing, and ask commissioners if there are any clarifying questions that I can report on. Margaret, Chair Hinkle, I'm sorry. I'll turn it over back to you.
Thank you very much for that report. Let me move on now to the next report. And I think with that, I turn to our Chief Technology Officer. Owen, please.
Hey, good morning, Commissioners. As you know, the Post Commission worked very hard over the last year to spin up and roll out our LEA portal so that the agencies could submit their documentation in a more streamlined manner than having to send emails back and forth, as was the case last year. With the assistance of our outside implementer, Slalom, we were able to deliver a portal this year opening it up at the end of May. And as Enrique showed you, there were over 5,000 requests that came in about 6 weeks, compared to last year that took us several months to get all the data in and into the systems to be evaluated. So we're very far ahead and very happy with how the portal turned out, both internally and externally. Interesting, I'd also like to note that 2 of the larger agencies with over 100 people with last names starting I to P chose to use the portal as opposed to actually filling out spreadsheets and sending them into us. So the portal worked quite well, not only for smaller agencies, but for larger agencies as well. Moving along, the next step was really to roll out the portal for complaint, disciplinary, and eventually use of force submissions. But before we started on that track, Slalom felt it was important to pause for a moment and take a questionnaire or review of where we had been with the agencies, poll them, and see how they felt about our technology. Just for some numbers, we authorized about 700 people to use the portal. Of those 700, about 650 logged in at least once. And during the 6 weeks of training, we trained over 300 people over Zoom, answering questions and showing them how to navigate the portal. So with that as background, I'd like to turn this over to one of our consultants, Lindsay Bergen from Slalom, and she'll be showing you some numbers that were collected from the survey.
All right, thank you, Owen. Let me pull this up quick here. All right, so my name is Lindsay Bergen. I'm an organizational effectiveness consultant with Slalom. I've been working on developing the training strategy and materials around the LEA portal for the last few months. We're here today representing a larger multidisciplinary team within Post, all of whom you can see on this slide. However, I would like to mention that this is just the core project team. We also work closely with many members of Post communications, certifications, and standards departments to gather requirements for the LEA portal that we've been building. So while only some of the team is represented on this slide, this has truly been a Post-wide effort. As Owen mentioned, we've been developing the LEA portal for submitting, tracking, and providing up-to-date information on recertification applications and complaints. And throughout this process, we wanted to get feedback directly from LEAs, which is why we created an implementation survey. A few weeks after the certifications area of the portal went live for LEAs, we sent an anonymous survey to LEA users to get feedback on the implementation of the portal so that we will know what is going well, what we can improve on, and how best to support LEAs going forward. And in the survey, we asked questions around communications, training and support, the LEA portal, and change readiness. We sent the survey to 632 users, and we had 193 people respond. Typically, response rates fall between 5 and 30%, and from my experience, 30% is a pretty optimistic number. So this is an excellent response rate. And it's clear that LEAs like to provide feedback and want their voices to be heard, which is great for us. And of those that responded, a majority were from small agencies and a small percent were from large agencies. Now that we have a little background on who responded, here's what we learned. Overall, we learned that LEAs are logging into the portal and feel it has improved the recertification process. 97% of respondents reported logging into the LEA portal by the time the survey had closed. And of those who logged into the portal, 92% said they feel prepared to perform their duties in the portal, and 89% said that they felt the portal improved the recertification process. And one thing to note about this is that 40% strongly agreed to that item, which is the highest strongly agree response percentage of the entire survey. The two most commonly used words to describe the portal were easy to use and user-friendly. All of this to say the investment Post is making in developing this portal is working, which is something that Post should be very proud of. We also found that awareness of training and support resources could be increased among LEAs. When asked if people knew where to find training and support resources, 81% said they knew where to find those, but we would like to get this number higher. There were comments made about not knowing about help areas in the portal, and one person commented, "I haven't been sent any of these yet," when these were resources that they would need to access themselves. So this just reinforces that awareness is currently an issue with training and something we can improve on. But when Digging deeper into training and support resources that LEAs preferred, email and live training were the top 2 responses. 71% reported that they attended a live training session. I will note that this was one of the bottom 3 lowest scores of the survey, but to give more context, that number is actually very impressive for a non-mandatory training, and it shows that LEAs are self-motivated and want to learn. And of those who attended the training, they found that the topics were useful, they found the content easy to understand, and were satisfied with the training. And the responses to those questions around the live sessions were some of the highest scores of the survey, which shows that the LEAs feel the sessions are going well. And it also shows that post, specifically Owen and his team, who led the live training sessions, are giving LEAs the knowledge and tools needed to do their jobs. We also had some questions around communications and saw some great results here as well. 91% reported they were satisfied with the current level of communications, and 93% said they found communications useful. We also asked an open-ended question on preferred method of communication, and there was an overwhelming response, most of them in all capital letters, of email. Lastly, we asked if there were any last things that LEAs wanted Post to know, and there was a ton of praise for the Post team, specifically around their dedication and helpfulness. There were 2 shout outs to Gina Joyce in particular, which is amazing considering it's very rare for people to mention names in survey responses. So this really speaks to her skills, and I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Gina and the Post team for their excellence in all they've been doing, because it clearly showed through in these survey results. All right, and we're taking these very seriously. Excuse me. We're taking the results very seriously, so we have some recommendations as well here. And the first one is, let's celebrate wins and successes. This is a muscle that is often maybe not flexed as much as it should be, which is important. And it's great because it really, and it's something that we should be doing more because we really want, and it really helps with adoption. And also increasing training and awareness is also extremely important. It really helps to retain information, so make plans to repeatedly mention and remind of helpful resources whenever and wherever possible will help LEAs get the answers when they need them. Our survey findings clearly indicate that LEAs are engaged and have important insights to share, so let's capitalize this and organize focus groups to keep those insights coming. There were also several requests to record the live session. We initially didn't record this in case there were any sensitive questions asked in those training sessions. However, this time around, we're going to be recording a version of the session without any LEA participants. So we'll post the link in Help Docs area of the portal so that LEA users can access the video at their own convenience. And the especially nice thing about this is that Post can do this with a low level of effort on their part, while it's going to have a really big impact for LEAs. And I know this may seem a bit basic and probably somewhat self-evident, but a formal communications plan helps to build awareness, drive engagement, and keep everything in line, which will also impact LEAs quite a bit. And lastly, we're planning on repeating the survey after the standards rollout. We want to keep hearing from LEAs, and now that we have a baseline, we can measure how any changes, including the recommendations on this page, were received. And selfishly, it's also a bit of a plug for any LEAs on the meeting today to keep an eye out for this in the future so that we can keep getting great feedback that we got this last time around. And with that, thank you so much for your time. I'm very grateful to have been invited to present today. Thank you.
And let me thank you, Lindsay, and Owen, and all the other members of the team for the report and for all the really extraordinary, in my view, work you've done with regard to the LEA portal implementation. We are grateful to all of you for that effort. And I think with that, unless there are any requests for clarification, let me move on to the next item on the agenda, the law enforcement officer credential report. Enrique, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as part of the packets, but unfortunately not up for discussion given the quorum topic, is a memo from me relative to officer credential with information on post. We've been approached by the Mass Chiefs Association, as well as the Executive Office of Public Safety, to coordinate efforts and place post certification information in the credentials that are distributed normally to law enforcement officers. There's associated regulations that the Office of Public Safety publishes that we've studied. These efforts are only preliminary. We've just begun those conversations. I think they're worth considering. They do represent an incremental cost to post, and that's articulated in the memo. Again, it was meant to have to be a discussion. Unfortunately, we cannot enter into deliberations as the chair stated. So I encourage commissioners, to the extent that you haven't already, look at the memo that's included in the packet, and we hope to bring those discussions at the next commission meeting, the one in September.
Thank you, Enrique. And let me now move on and turn to our general counsel, Randy Ravitz. Randy, is there anything in terms of report that you wish to make today?
Yes, thank you. Just briefly, there were 3 items listed on the agenda, and what we had expected was that with each of those items, we would provide a presentation in some detail, discussing documents that have been prepared that were included in the packet distributed to the commissioners, and engaging in a discussion, entertaining comments and questions, and perhaps taking a vote if the commission was prepared to do so on those documents. Because there's a lack of a quorum at this meeting, we can put off the substance until a future meeting, but we'll just briefly discuss the process and where things are, the status of those 3 items. So I'll be talking about the first 2, and then Deputy General Counsel Lightfoot will be talking about the third. The first was a document entitled Guidance for Constables and Other Law Enforcement Personnel regarding 555 CMR 9.00. And that set of regulations was one that the commission had adopted that would govern initial certification of all officers and recertification of independently applying or self-sponsored individuals. And that is making its way to the Secretary of the Commonwealth's office to be formally promulgated, in other words, to finish the process by having them published. But in the meantime, we had prepared a document that provides more guidance for certain individuals regarding what those regulations would mean to them. And a lot of it focuses on constables and answering questions that have been raised. And then there's also a part that that would provide clarification regarding a particular section of the regulations that prohibits an individual from executing an arrest or performing police duties and functions without being certified. And the clarification would highlight the fact that that applies only to an individual who is serving as a law enforcement officer within the definition found in the statute as it has been construed by the commission. So that also was intended to answer some questions. And I should note that when I refer to these documents being in the packet, traditionally the commission posts its meeting packets on its website shortly after the meeting, so members of the public can look at those drafts, see where they are. They can still provide comments to us, and then if those drafts are taken up at a future commission meeting, the comments would be taken into account. The second item is it's also a draft set of guidance to law enforcement agencies and prosecuting offices regarding 2 other sets of regulations, 555 CMR 1 and 555 CMR 6. The first of those sets of regulations deals with the handling of complaints alleging law enforcement misconduct by handling of those complaints by law enforcement agencies, and then how they are the information on those complaints is transmitted to the commission, and then the commission's own adjudicatory processes. And then the second set of regulations was promulgated jointly with the MPTC, Municipal Police Training Committee, pursuant to statute, and deals with uses of force. And so that set of guidance has been in development and made available to members of the public for comment in various forms since April. And there was a prior version that was, at least one prior version that was posted on the website, and there have been some revisions made to that. And the packet includes a revised version as well as a version showing the changes in redlining. And one area, for example, would elaborate on the meaning of a non-minor matter that needs to be reported to the commission. And this latest version focuses on forms of conduct that are identified in the commission's governing statute or in its regulations as being forms of conduct that either require or allow for a preliminary inquiry or disciplinary action or a referral for prosecution or investigation to another authority, or some type of special attention in reporting and record keeping. So it focuses on those as being potential forms of non-minor matters or presumptive non-minor matters. It seeks to clarify and elaborate on a number of additional areas, but without establishing new rules, without establishing new obligations. Now, because of the confined scope that I just mentioned, that it's not intended to promulgate new regulations, it's intended to explain and elaborate on existing regulations. There were some comments that were proposed that people will not see reflected in this draft, but that doesn't mean that those comments have been disregarded and that they're not being acted on. So for example, there are certain comments dealing with agency record keeping and reporting and the auditing of agency records. As discussed in a prior meeting, that's something that's being worked on separately as another plan where those things can be addressed comprehensively. There are also, there were suggestions made that did not just deal with clarifying the regulations, but dealt with things like how we communicate to agencies and to members of the public about the complaint process and about how they can obtain action when they perceive misconduct by a law enforcement officer. Those comments were well taken as well. And those are things that we are working on outside of this particular process. So with all of that, we again are always open to feedback and comments and ideas from inside the commission and outside the commission. The most helpful form of feedback is something in writing that shows exactly what it is that the person would ideally like to see, perhaps by redlining the document that has been prepared. We appreciate that and find that to be particularly helpful. The more specific the suggestions are, the easier they are for us to try and implement what it is that the commenter is looking for. So with that, I will move on to pass the floor over to, if it's okay with the chair, to Deputy General Counsel Lightfoot, who could talk about the third item on our list.
Yes, of course. Please. Thank you, Randy, for your report. And Veronica, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. As General Counsel Ravitz has stated, I have the third item, and it is also included in your packet. We anticipate and are quite excited about our move into a more permanent space. And we have coming up our first in-person adjudicatory hearing. With those things on deck, we feel the need to have a policy that is noticed to the public and people are made aware of regarding the prohibition of weapons. So in your packet, you're going to find a memorandum. In that memorandum, there are 3 different sections. That first section speaks to the text or certain language that may be appropriate on the Commission's website and on correspondence that the Commission sends to the public. That second section in that memorandum will speak to notice of the public of the proposed weapons policy. And then the third section of the memorandum speaks to regulatory and statutory provisions that support the language that would be included in the text and the posting of the notice. We relied on the Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance, DCAM. We also relied on the policy from the State Ethics Commission. You'll see that quoted heavily. And we also looked at the Civil Service Commission. For your convenience and in the public packet, you will see those policies appended to the memorandum. And just in closing, I will direct your attention to a proposed policy that you'll see also included there, and certain text and language that is recommended to be included on notices that may be sent by the executive director, that would be sent by the Division of Standards, and that would also be included on adjudicatory hearing notices that come from the hearings administrator.
Thank you, Veronica. And I think with that, we have concluded the matters on the agenda that we can address today without our statutory quorum requirement having been met. Let me thank all of the members of the staff for your hard work and preparation of the materials that were provided to the public and provided to the commissioners. Let me also thank those who have presented today. And on behalf of the commission, once again, I want to thank the governor and her team for the appointment of our newest member of the commission and welcoming him, that is Chief Lester Baker, to his attendance at this, his first commission meeting. I think with that, we will adjourn the meeting. And once again, gratitude to everyone for all of your hard work, all the members of the staff and the commission.
Thank you.